Welcome to the Rise of Cryptocurrencies show. On the 5th of January, we released our top 5 cryptocurrencies for 2018. One of the coins, EOS, is already up 60% in 1 week. Today, we welcome a guest that I think is important to hear from because it proves that taking advantage and taking massive action of what's going on right now, having guts, is necessary to create life-changing gains with altcoins and also allow for serious career shifts. This is the time to take radical action. Jonathan Kaplan runs a private fund for blockchain projects, and he joins us in order to shed light on current events and how to position with cryptocurrencies in 2018. Jonathan, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Lior. Thanks. How about yourself?
I'm doing well myself. I'm excited to get started. I wanted to touch first on exchanges that are getting bottlenecked with a rush of new investors coming in. Processing times are slower. Wiring and depositing can take up to a week. Same with releasing your funds. Some of them aren't taking on new customers at all. 250,000 new accounts were opened in one day for the popular exchanges last week. This is hypergrowth. Is there too much greed? And are people entering this space without doing the basic research needed?
That's a fantastic question. And I think the short answer is yes. I think there's a lot of good and a lot of bad to unpack about that whole situation. I forget exactly who said it, but I was reading on crypto Twitter the other day. Someone said, a year ago, I was afraid that the world would never discover Bitcoin and blockchain technology. And now I'm a little too worried that they have discovered it to this extent and that it's blown up so quickly. The infrastructure, as far as the exchanges and the fiat on-ramps and the ability to actually navigate the ecosystem is completely overwhelmed. So on the one hand, that's frustrating for myself as an investor and a trader, as somebody running a crypto hedge fund, trying to deal with sometimes not even being able to access these exchanges or having to go through multiple asset transfers if I want to convert my dollars into crypto on, say, GDAX or Kraken as a fiat on-ramp, and then send that crypto over to Binance or Bittrex or one of the more alt-focused exchanges. Now even Ethereum, which is what we used to use to transfer funds quickly, can be overloaded, and it's just been very, very difficult. I'm certainly not complaining. It's a fascinating space, and it's an amazing time to be a part of this. But yeah, for the folks that are coming in right now and are trying to establish an account or trying to trade funds, bear with us while we deal with all of the world that seems to be wanting to get in at the same time. The upside, of course, is that, the entire world is waking up to this. It's very exciting to see Bitcoin and crypto in the mainstream media, and I can finally go to a holiday party or a gathering or a dinner and not quite be that annoying guy who won't shut up about Bitcoin because finally everybody else wants to talk about it. I am a bit worried that we have come away from the original focus of Bitcoin and this technology as a way to create a separate financial system that can't be censored or corrupted or inflated away, that provides freedom and transparency to a system that was otherwise manipulated by a handful of political and financial elites, and that the folks that are coming in now don't necessarily have that same cypherpunk influence and aren't interested in what this technology is and why it's valuable and how it might change the world. They just see all their friends buying Ripple and doubling their money in a week, and so they want to come in and throw money, whatever the next Bitcoin type of thing is. And so I've been spending a lot of time talking with friends and family that have been asking me, should I buy Ripple? Should I buy Tron? Should I buy, whatever the new hot thing is? And I have to explain to them the market cap and how you can't just compare all the absolute prices of the individual tokens, and how to do research on the network fundamentals and the development team and the roadmaps. And so I am a bit worried that a lot of people are going to get burnt and turned off of crypto when they invest in the next scam or Ponzi or BitConnect. And I just hope that the folks that are coming in right now, I think the speculation is helpful and that it brings a lot of attention to the space. And that's great, because I've been trying for years to get people to pay attention to Bitcoin and the crypto, and they've never been that interested, and now they are. So I'm very excited about that. But I hope people are willing to take the time to do their due diligence and invest intelligently. And I don't see it happening anytime soon, but I'm hoping we're able to rein in all the speculation in favor of a discussion on, well, what type of value can this technology bring to the world? How can we best enable it to do that, and not simply discuss how we're going to drive our Lambos on the moon?
The big commercial banks, Wall Street, the futures markets, and all the usual suspects are definitely not entering the sector for idealistic reasons or to liberate humanity. They want to capitalize on trading fees, and that could be in the tens of billions of dollars, and capture the volatility. Mass adoption means that banks and governments will start to take active part in this sector. Are you in the camp of people saying this is part of the inevitable and natural growth of anything that is important and monumental, or would you like to keep it Satoshi style and more for true idealists only?
I would definitely put myself in the latter camp. The reason that Bitcoin caught my attention so forcefully when I discovered it was that I was a freshman in college going into business school in the fall of 2008. And of course, at that time, the global financial system was on the verge of collapse. And as a naive 18-year-old, I didn't really understand why. And people were throwing around words like, collateralized debt obligations and subprime loans and mortgage-backed securities. And so as I was going through business school, I thought to myself, well, if I plan on being successful in the world of business, I better understand what's going on right now and what happened to the world economy and why we came so close to financial Armageddon. And so I started reading more and more about the history of money and the history of finance and the way that the fiat currencies of the world had played out over, various timelines. And you start putting all these different pieces for it, and you realize that it's really not a good idea to give a government or a state control of your money supply or your financial system. And so what really attracted me to Bitcoin in the first place was this idea that you had this separate financial system that was based, like I said earlier, not on the whims of a few very powerful financial and political elite, but on the open source ethos of the internet and on transparency and mathematical logic. And it was a system that you could, well, you never had a choice. If you didn't like the way that the current economy worked, good luck going anywhere else. There was no other game to play. But now suddenly, if you don't like this game, you can go and play a different game. And if that game ever becomes corrupted or faulty, well, you can fork the code and make a few changes and then create an even better game. And if it is truly better, well, then the market will support that. So, it's been interesting watching the banks and the institutions get involved with this. There's a great quote, I think, by Upton Sinclair that goes something along the lines of, it's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. And with Bitcoin having been created as a way to escape the current financial system and to get away from the banks and the players that had a large role, not just in the 2008 financial crisis, but in many financial crises, going back hundreds of years, I think that there was a lot of denial and maybe cognitive dissonance where the banks and the big institutions refused to see the value in Bitcoin, because to see that value would be to admit that their system was flawed and fragile. And just now, Bitcoin has gotten so big and crypto in general, not just Bitcoin, but it's gotten so big to where they can't afford to ignore it anymore. And I think that's going to be really interesting. I think the theme of 2018 for crypto as a whole is going to be, how do large institutions and governments deal with the system that was designed to allow people to escape from a system controlled by governments and institutions. So on the one hand, I think that it's bullish for people that are either already in the market or getting in right now, because normally when it comes to new asset classes, and I do think that crypto represents an entirely new asset class, that the banks and the institutions got in first. You know, back in the 90s during the dot-com boom, the average retail investor was the last person to get in. You know, the mom and pops, by the time they were buying stocks in these new tech companies, you know, the banks had already gotten in there as the VCs gobbled up IPO shares. And then, you know, finally at the very end, you know, your barber, your taxi driver was able to get involved. But this time it's been the computer programmers and the nerds and the little guys like me, you know, playing around on a computer the last couple of years that were able to discover this and get in first. And so I think that's part of the reason you have this hype cycle that, you know, average people are becoming Bitcoin millionaires. And I think that there is a lot of money, as evidenced by the number of applications we've seen at these exchanges that are having to temporarily deny new account registrations because they're so overwhelmed. I definitely think it's bullish that institutions are getting involved. At the same time, I do worry that crypto is becoming such a powerful force that governments are going to be forced to take a stand. And we've already seen a bit of that in China, and I believe we'll continue to see the governments waking up to the fact that this is going to make it very difficult to collect taxes and to control capital flows. And I would caution people against thinking that this bull market will go, obviously it won't go on forever, but that there are quite a few black swans out there that could come in at any moment and deliver a big shock to this system. And that's why my fund takes a more conservative approach and tries to look at every investment from the risk return standpoint, and to err on the side of caution, because this is a very exciting time, but it's definitely uncharted territory. And there's a lot of very powerful people, institutions, governments that are going to have to confront what's going on right now. I'm hoping that, at least in the U.S. here with the Trump administration, they seem to be favoring, you know, some light regulation in terms of combating the scams and the Ponzi's and letting the space flourish, not wanting to stifle innovation. But of course, the same can't be said for more authoritarian regimes around the world. So it certainly won't be boring. And I am excited to see what 2018 brings.
Let's talk about Venezuela. President Maduro has ordered the issuance of the first 100 million petros, an oil-backed national cryptocurrency. The first national meeting of petro miners will occur on January 14th. So that is today, as we're recording, along with the publication of the white paper. We know their national currency, the bolivar, is dead. Is this something that will happen with more shaky countries, either currency backed by the natural resources of the country or another form of cryptocurrency?
I do think that we're going to see governments creating, I wouldn't even call it a cryptocurrency in the sense that it's more along the lines of the digital money we have now. If you have a Wells Fargo account and you've got $3,000 sitting in it, that's digital money. It's digital fiat, but it's not a cryptocurrency or a crypto asset. So I do think we'll see that. There's been rumors that, you know, China might want to put the renminbi on the blockchain, or the same with the Russian ruble. And of course, you've got what Venezuela is trying to do. And what I find fascinating is that, and I think this goes back to my earlier quote about the cognitive dissonance of not wanting to see the writing on the wall when the writing on the wall is telling you that you've been doing the wrong thing, or that your course of action is unwise. And it's interesting how there are people in Venezuela right now that are literally surviving because of Bitcoin. It enables them to buy the food and medicine and supplies that they just can't get otherwise. And certainly to protect their wealth against the hyperinflationary action that we've seen on the Venezuelan Bolivar this year. And instead of the state saying, okay, you know what, printing money doesn't seem to be solving our problems, and maybe we should take a look at changing the way our monetary policy and financial system are structured, and maybe adopting something like Bitcoin as a reserve currency, or moving in that direction. They double down on the same failed policies. And I think that it just proves Bitcoin's point that you shouldn't let your government or your state have control of your monetary policy. And I think what we'll see is similar to what happened in China back in October, that one of the main value drivers of Bitcoin is that it's censorship resistant, and that it's anti-fragile, and that what doesn't kill it makes it stronger, and that just like one country can't kill the internet, maybe they can kill it in their country, but someone somewhere is going to be, providing internet access. And well, the same thing happens with Bitcoin, that China tried to shut down all the Bitcoin exchanges, and now it looks like they're trying to eliminate a lot of the mining activity that's going on. And well, we saw a good 2-week correction, and then Bitcoin bounced right back and just kept going. And so I think we'll see something very similar in Venezuela or in other countries, where instead of acknowledging that humanity is evolving and that our financial system is moving away from the state having complete and total control over the sole currency available to its citizens, or making financial and monetary policy from the top down in centralized fashion, instead of adopting a decentralized way of doing things, I think they're going to double down on the same failed policies. And I think that's going to just prove Bitcoin and crypto's point, and show people on a wider scale why exactly we need this technology and why it's valuable. I think one of the biggest problems I've had over the last few years in trying to show friends and family and strangers that I end up sitting next to on an airplane or sitting next to on a bus, because I just can't stop talking about this stuff, is why it's so valuable for people around the world. Because here in America, we take for granted our financial system that generally functions pretty well, and our relatively stable currency, and our access to credit and things of that nature. And most people don't realize what it's like to be a Venezuelan merchant, or a Chinese peasant, or an African farmer, or somebody living in India during that demonetization catastrophe that happened back in November of 2016. Once you realize how good we have it, and how terribly constructed financial networks around the world are, especially in developing countries, then you really start to get why censorship resistance and inflation resistance is so valuable. Whereas here in America, we're just thinking, well, I can't use Bitcoin to buy a cup of coffee, so what good is it? And situations like we see in Venezuela will, I think, help the first world to see why this technology is going to be such a game changer for the entire world.
Jonathan, let's talk about regulations. How will governments control this sector and navigate their way if they succeed?
That's a good question. I'm of the opinion that they will very quickly wake up to the fact that it's going to be difficult to control money once it is in the crypto space. And I think they are going to focus on that point of conversion between fiat and crypto. So obviously the exchanges are going to be where they're looking at that. And of course, as we've seen in China, I think that governments are going to be going that route. What I'm looking forward to is the advancement and proliferation of decentralized exchanges, and more the ability to live within a crypto universe. I think that over the last 2 decades, we've seen people that really live more and more on the internet, that people are spending more time on social media, and they are eschewing actually attending events in person, and maybe they're watching them on YouTube or Periscope. And well, now that we have a real digital financial system, I think that it's going to we're going to see more and more that people are willing to live within that system. So, yeah, that's going to be probably a pain point for governments to try to control how people are moving money in and out of the crypto space. But what I see more and more is that money that gets into the crypto space is probably going to want to stay there. Maybe this most recent wave of new money coming in that doesn't really appreciate the fundamental underpinnings of the technology and why it was created, and they're more just market speculators looking to make money. As quickly as that money's come in, I imagine that it will come out when, you know, some of the shit coins and the scams and the Ponzi's collapse. But I do think there are quite a number of people that, whether they're drawn in by speculation or just curiosity, are going to discover that we're building the crypto infrastructure in a way that allows you to stay in crypto, that you can have your crypto debit card that you can spend around the world, and that, you know, more and more merchants are accepting some form of payment, even if it's not Bitcoin. It might be, you know, Dash or Litecoin or a variety of other payment methods, and that with decentralized exchanges and decentralized marketplaces and other tools and services, that, yeah, it's going to possibly be more difficult or more stringent as far as the regulations that are put on these exchanges. But I do think that we're starting to see people that get into crypto and then refuse to go back to the existing fiat system. And I think that's going to be where it's really interesting, because once you're in crypto, it's hard to control, maybe impossible. And I think that's where the real fight's going to be.
Lastly, Jonathan, technology is a barrier for tens of millions of people, even billions of people worldwide of all ages. If cryptocurrencies become much more widely used, will we see a world shaped by how fast and how gifted populations are in terms of technology? In other words, tens of millions don't know how to download wallets secured for hacking, be responsible for their own money without a customer service or any other third-party parachute to rely upon. Obviously, when when you talk about crimes and theft, people will start to target other people's phones and other people's wallets, especially small children, as a way to steal cryptocurrencies. Is this a huge obstacle on the road to mass adoption?
That is such a great question, and I think there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I think there is something of a paradigm shift required when you start getting into Bitcoin and the crypto space. And for almost every part of our existing financial system, you're trusting a third party to take care of your money, to keep it safe, to make sure that whether you're sending or receiving, that it gets to those desired destinations safely, and that if anything goes wrong, you can appeal to that authority to correct it. You have chargebacks on credit cards, and if your wire transfer gets stuck, you can call up your bank and ask them questions, and things of that nature. And simply, you know, storing your money in a bank by default. I don't think most people realize that if you have money sitting in a checking account, it's not really your money. You've actually loaned the bank that money, and you're hoping that they pay you back, but they're not under an obligation necessarily to do that. And well, with crypto, you are in charge of your own money, and you're supposed to hold your own private keys. And well, like they say, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that we have a lot of improvement to do when it comes to the user interfaces and the ease of access for this technology. A large part of why my partner Frank and I started Numeric Capital was that the people that we were talking to about this technology were falling in love with the ideas and finding it so difficult to actually get down and dirty with this technology. And when it came to establishing exchange accounts and trying to pick a wallet and understanding the difference between web-based and paper and hardware, and, you know, God forbid you send your Bitcoin to a Bitcoin Cash address, and well, what the hell the difference is between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash anyway, and what are all these forks? And by the time you get into this just a little bit, you realize how much more you don't know and how difficult and complicated it is. And so that's a part of the value proposition we have as a fund is, if you want to be a part of this, well, let us handle all the hard work. and you don't have to worry about all that. But I really do want to see improvements there. This whole space was developed by tech nerds and computer programmers that were comfortable getting, really intricate with this technology. And I really want to see us get to the point where, it was very difficult to send an email in 1991, and now, you swipe your finger on a phone and it sends. So I think we need to get to that point. But also, I think it's important, like I said earlier, that people are willing to accept that this is going to be a mental shift in responsibility from trusting third parties to eliminating them. So I'm hoping to see not just the improvement in the technology itself that allows people to better understand how it works and better keep custody of the funds themselves, but also an improvement in the awareness of why it's important to control your own money and to not trust third parties.
Jonathan, I'll see you in the summer when I travel to Austin. You run a hedge fund, though, of cryptocurrencies. Could you share with us a little bit of the details?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. For those who are not familiar with Numeric Capital, it's a crypto asset hedge fund focused exclusively on the crypto space that my partner Frank Ju and I started. Well, we started back in August, and by the time the legal infrastructure and everything was in place, that the fund went live at the beginning of December. And well, it's been a very, very exciting time for us. And like I mentioned earlier, we started because my partner and I were both managing money for friends and family that really wanted to be a part of this and just didn't have the time or the technical inclination to be able to keep up with it.
And Brian shared with
everything is changing so quickly, and the space runs 24/7, 365. The bell doesn't ring at 4:30, and you don't get weekends off, and it's insanely volatile, and the whole space is evolving so quickly that buy and hold for the long term on a multi-year schedule, I don't think it's going to be a very good strategy. So, I tell people that are getting into this, be prepared to babysit it. You're going to want to keep an eye on things. You're going to want to stay up to date with everything. And well, for those who really like what's happening and want to be a part of this revolution, but maybe they have a day job and a family, and the idea of having to spend several hours a day keeping track of all this is too overwhelming. Well, that's where we aim to provide our service. So for those who are more interested in learning about what we do, our website is numeris.capital, and we're always looking to connect with people that are interested in crypto or that want to discuss the new fascinating things that are going on. And aside from making money and helping our friends and family and the people we care about and the people that support this space to make money off of this, part of the reason that I'm so happy doing what I do and running the fund, and I know I speak for my partner Frank, is that this has connected us with just some of the most brilliant, amazing people. So I do encourage anyone listening who is interested and wants to connect to please let me know. Feel free to shoot me an email, and I always look forward to connecting with like-minded folks that are as excited about crypto as I am, and certainly appreciate good folks like yourself, Lior, taking the time to talk with me about all this and give us the platform to tell people, hey, this is exciting, and if you haven't been paying attention yet, you really ought to start, because I think 2018 is going to be full of fireworks, and you're not going to want to miss the show.
Jonathan, is this fund open to investors at the moment?
The fund is a closed invite-only fund. It's not open to the public. And like I said, if people want to learn more exactly about what's required to become an investor, please go to our website. There's a contact form there. Feel free to shoot me an email, and would be happy to discuss with folks this particulars in person.
Thanks for sharing this research with us today, Jonathan. Always a pleasure.